pay us to think. They pay us to know. We know we can beat them. There's no excuses why we shouldn't. Win the game, period. W is on 3, man. Let's go. W on 3. 1, 2, 3, W.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sisters. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report Live. Week number 1 in the books, and I'm happy to report Redskins got the dub. We're 1-0. Jay Gruden getting his first career win in week 1 as Redskins head coach. Was previously 0-4 going into week 1 in 2018 versus the Arizona Cardinals. Redskins thoroughly dominated that football game. We talked about it on the R3, just how impressive the Redskins looked. It was a fun game to watch. Really encouraging to see the fellas go out and dominate the way that they did. However, I gave you a caveat and told you before the game even took place, and I've talked about this on numerous platforms, I told you I didn't think the Arizona Cardinals were going to be a very good team. That didn't stop me from picking the Arizona Cardinals to beat us because I thought their home field advantage and the fact that Jay Gruden has struggled in the first week of the season the previous 4 times as Redskins head coach. Not to mention the preseason looked eerily similar to the last 2 or 3 preseasons that we've had, which all resulted in the Redskins coming out very lethargic and flat in week 1. All of these things led to me picking the Arizona Cardinals. But I told you that we were the better team. I told you that if we had any hopes and aspirations of going 10-6, which I told you was the best case scenario, the best possible outcome for the Redskins this season, to me, is 10-6. I haven't changed that mindset. I still think we're going to be a 9-7 football team. Nothing has changed because of what we did in week 1. But I will tell you this, week 1 does have me in a different mindset from this standpoint. If we can run the football and play defense the way that we did in week 1, granted, it was Arizona. I can't stress that enough. And I think Arizona not going to be a very good team this particular season, but as the year wears on, they're going to get better. You won't see the same disorganized group that we saw in week 1. They had a new head coach. It looked like a team with a new head coach that was trying to figure things out. We got the benefit of some calls that went our way. Obviously, the safety that could have been comes to mind. I thought that was a great job by Alex Smith of getting rid of that football. There were a couple of penalties that penalty against Chandler Jones on the roughing the passer against Alex Smith. I was begging, though. I was at the house begging. I said, if you don't give it to me, I'm cool. But I'd love to have it. I'll take it if you're giving it. And they gave it to us. And we got the benefit of a lot of whistles in that football game. And we took advantage of every single one of those calls that went against the Arizona Cardinals. So we were able to come out victorious in dominant fashion, similar to what we did to the Oakland Raiders. And I referenced that in the R3, that we looked like a team that you could possibly get behind and think that maybe 9-7 isn't the sky for the Redskins. Maybe 10-6 isn't the best possible scenario for the Redskins. I'm not willing to go out on that limb just yet because the Arizona Cardinals weren't a good enough opponent for me to gauge just how good the Redskins were, and still didn't get the kind of pressure that I was looking for. The interior pressure was there. Love what I saw out of Jonathan Allen and Payne and Ioannidis, but the edge pressure was not there. And against a much better football team with a quarterback that can take advantage of having time in the pocket, we're going to pay for that. So this is a great test in week 2. One that I have been looking forward to because I think that Andrew Luck isn't quite where he wants to be, but he's slowly getting back into that form. And this is a great time to get Andrew Luck in the Indianapolis Colts because 3 weeks from now, they're going to be in a much better position. Andrew Luck is going to be a lot more comfortable. They're going to be a much more dangerous football team come week 5, week 6. Great to get this out of the way in week 2 while Andrew Luck is still trying to feel his way through the injury and getting back into football shape and taking some hits. And he took a vicious one versus Cincinnati. And so I was able to watch that football game. Could tell you a number of things, and we'll get to the Redskins and Colts Week 2 matchup when we get to the bow and go. But I want to continue to talk about what I saw in Week 1 versus Arizona. This is a very, very interesting Redskins football team because this is the first time in a long time that we've actually got the pieces in place for a team that can not only run the football, but run it effectively to the point where it impacts the outcome of the game. We haven't seen the Redskins have a rushing attack that can actually change the outcome of games since, you guessed it, 2012 with Robert Griffin III and Alfred Morris. Wake up, wake up, wake up, it's Alfred Morris. So we haven't seen it in that long, okay? So if we can get that kind of rhythm going where Adrian Peterson is continuing to get into a rhythm. Chris Thompson, we know what this guy's fully capable of when healthy. And you sprinkle in whomever, Samaje P. Ryan, Rob Kelly, whoever you want to sprinkle in as the other guy getting a couple of touches throughout the course of the game. If we can continue to have that mixture going and have the success that we saw from the offensive line up front, and I thought the entire offensive line, that goes for all five, including Sean Laval and Chase Rouillet, I thought the entire offensive line was stellar in Week 1. We're going to see a much better opponent in Week 3 when we see the Packers. That defensive line is going to be a great test because all across their defensive line are nothing but studs. Muhammad Wilkerson, Mike Daniels, and they also have... I'm missing one more guy, but he's a difference maker up front as well. So that's going to give us more of that Philadelphia Eagles, Fletcher Cox, dominant physical presence up front that we've struggled with in the past. So I don't think we're going to necessarily get that against the Indianapolis Colts. I think we should be able to handle them up front. Not relatively easy, but I think we should be able to do to them what we did to the Arizona Cardinals up front from an offensive standpoint. You see the difference that Jordan Reed, what he makes. And it's funny because all offseason, I heard a bunch of Redskins fans, we need to trade Jordan Reed. He can't ever stay healthy. And I'm like, bruh, chill. Stop talking crazy. The man is too much of a difference maker when he's healthy. I understand you all in your feelings and you all in your pocket because this man he's at some point, and I don't want to speak this on him, but we know every year he's going to have some issues. But when the man's healthy, there may not be a better pass-catching tight end in the league than Jordan Reed. So it's good to see Crowder out there running around, catching the football. We still haven't tapped into the receiver position yet. We didn't have to last game. But I'm anxious to see what these receivers are really capable of. And when we finally did push it down the field, Paul Richardson was open. And Alex Smith just missed him, and we got the pass interference. Well, it was more of a illegal contact penalty that they called, and it was illegal contact down the field. And that little bit of contact did slow Paul Richardson up just enough so that that football wasn't on the money. So I'm anxious to see how that all works. We did come away with a couple of injuries. Cam Sims injured himself, so did Trey Quinn. So I also want to see what happens at the receiver position. Hopefully we're going to get our other receiver back off of the concussion because we're going to need some more bodies out there at the receiver position. We've probably incurred the most injuries this season thus far at the receiver position. So we're definitely going to need some guys to step up at wide receiver because we're down a couple of guys most likely in the upcoming weeks. So looking forward to seeing the rest of the group step up, make some plays at receiver. If we can continue to have the run game be the catalyst that it was last week, it will take a lot of the pressure off of the receiving group, and it will allow them to just be pieces of the puzzle and not the actual puzzle. So that week 1 performance was encouraging, but I'm going to stress this. Don't run with that one and take it out of context. It was the Arizona Cardinals, young football team, new head coach, going through a transition period. We caught them at the right time. We dominated them like we were supposed to. We were the better team, and we did what we were supposed to do. I didn't think we were going to do it, but we did it, and I'm so glad that we did. Now it's on to the Indianapolis Colts, and I look at Andrew Luck, I look at T.Y. Hilton, I look at their running back situation with Jordan Wilkins, a rookie out of Ole Miss, another rookie in Nyheim Hines out of NC State. Both guys very dangerous. We got to do what we did last week against arguably one of the most dangerous backs in the league in David Johnson and shut those guys down. So when you look at what the Redskins were able to do, it was really impressive from an offensive standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, and hell, even on special teams, Tress Way was outstanding. There was a punt that he had from our own end zone, that same possession where Alex Smith barely got away with the pass that could have easily been intentional grounding and been a safety in the end zone. Tress Way kicked that football 65 yards, or I think it was either 55 yards, and then the 10-yard penalty for illegal blocking the back made it a 65-yard net punt. I believe that's exactly what it was. And I can't begin to explain to you just how big of a deal that is. To go from a team potentially getting the football at midfield to having your punter kick it to where he fair catches it at the 45-yard line or gets tackled at the 45-yard line, and then they tack on a 10-yard penalty and push him back to the 35, and all of a sudden you flip the field position and they've got the length of the field to go instead of having a half of the field and having 2 first downs put them in field goal range. I mean, that's huge. So it was a total team effort last game. Make no mistake about it, though. This might be the most complete roster we've had in quite some time. I mean, and I'm thinking this predates, the Joe Gibbs 2.0 run that we had. All those teams had holes in them. We were either strong on offense or strong on defense. Most times it was defense with Greg Williams and his crew. We generally had suspect offenses under Joe Gibbs 2.0. And in 2012, we were really suspect on the defensive side. The offense was so dynamic and explosive with Robert and Pierre and all of the guys that we had that we were able to do some really, really good things on the offensive side of the football, but we had holes on that roster. This may be the most complete roster we've had. I still think we're missing a dominant edge rusher, but if we can continue to get interior pass rush, it will help those edge rushers be able to hit home a lot better and without actually being able to necessarily win right off the snap. So really looking forward to seeing if we can continue to do the things that we did against Arizona in week 2 versus the Indianapolis Colts. So with that being said, let's jump into the bow and go. Let's put a bow on this Arizona win and start to turn our attention to the Indianapolis Colts in our home opener in 2018 at home at FedEx Field versus the Indianapolis Colts.
Redskins bow and go.
So I went back and watched the game. Obviously, you get excited when you win a game the way the Redskins won and you dominate the way that we did. And there were some things that stood out to me. And the first thing that stood out was Adrian Peterson. AD made some runs in that game that if we had a different back in there, I can just tell you right now that those runs don't happen. And that's the difference. And I've been talking about this for quite some time about the difference between an elite back and a guy that can take a run that's supposed to be 1 yard and turn it into a 7-yard gain, or a guy that can take a 2-yard gain and get you 6. There's a huge difference between 2nd and 4 and 2nd and 8. Tremendous difference. I can't begin to explain to you the difference between the two. And there was a run, and I think all of you can picture this same play in your head, where Adrian Peterson is going off right tackle. He gets the football, and Patrick Peterson is coming on a run blitz right off the edge. And so Adrian Peterson stops right in his tracks, cuts back, makes him miss. There's another defender there. He's able to juke both of those guys, break the tackle of Patrick Peterson, and stiff arm him off of him, and then power through for a gain of about 8 on a play that easily could have been stopped for no gain, loss of 1, gain of 1. You put any of our other backs, including Chris Thompson, in that same situation, we're going to lose yards or we're going to barely get back to the line of scrimmage. That's the difference maker that Adrian Peterson is. He's able to take a run that probably was blocked for -1 and turn it into an 8-yard gain. That's huge. And you saw that in that game, the difference that this guy makes and his ability to run through arm tackles, his ability to fight for extra yards, his ability to get what's there and then some. We've been missing that in the backfield for a very long time. And that precedes AM. I mean, we haven't had that probably since Clinton Portis. So it's been a while since we've had a dynamic back that can get what's there and then some. And that's what makes this rushing attack that much more dangerous, is you beat them up with AD and then you switch them up and you give them the changeup with Chris Thompson. And the fact that we were able to run so many different formations, so many different sets. You had Alex Smith in the gun. You had Alex Smith under center. You had a jet sweep. You had some read options. You had a speed option. We saw a number of different things that we were doing out of different sets. We kept the Cardinals on their heels. And with Alex Smith's mobility, there are so many different things that the Redskins can now do. And he's a guy that you have to account for in the run game, which makes the offense that more potent and hard to stop. You go to the defensive side of the football, going back and watching the game, really impressed with what I saw out of our secondary. They were so impressive, were the secondary members, all 4 of them. 5 if you throw in Fab Moreau, who I thought was excellent in the slot. There were some great breakups by just about every member of the secondary. DJ Swearinger with a great breakup on the 3rd down, knocking the football away. We saw what Dunny did. He was extraordinary in this game. Had a pick, almost had another one, several breakups, had a great tackle on a 3rd down where he was able to drive on a route and stop the receiver from picking up an additional yard to pick up the 1st down and force a punt early in the ball game. I mean, he was everywhere. Josh Norman, I told you, I thought he set the tempo and the tenor of the game with his hit on David Johnson in the flats. The guys just seem uber aware. They seem to see what's going on before it happens. Don't want them to be overly nosy, however, and give something up. So I think I saw Josh Norman. I think a receiver got behind him on one play, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not getting my games mixed up. Nonetheless, really impressed with what I saw out of the secondary as far as tackling. And remember, tackling was a problem in the preseason, was not a problem in week 1. The physicality that they played with was extraordinary, but the ball skills of the guys in the secondary was second to none in this game. And if we can continue to do that, you got to be encouraged by what we saw in week 1. Good to see Zach Brown out there. I thought he was great in coverage out in space, running with David Johnson. A nice tackle down by the end zone on a little flat route that they were trying to get David Johnson into the end zone with. He wasn't having any parts of it. Good to see him and Mason Foster out there. And then they stuck Visual in. And you know who else had a really strong game that I didn't talk about on the R3? When I went back, I said, man, this guy was all over the place. Josh Harvey Clemens. JHC was everywhere, had a nice knockdown of a football on the 3rd down. And I think that play might have had some legs to it because they caught us coming with a little bit of pressure. We didn't hit home. They had like a somewhat of a screen called. It was a little bit of a mock screen, and it looked like it had some life to it. And JHC knocked it down and killed that before it could get going. He was all over the place. I told you the Redskins really like this guy in nickel situations. They like his ability to run and cover. And I thought he was another standout in this football game, dropping into space, taking away some throws that Bradford wanted to go to, his first read. And Josh Harvey Clemens is dropping underneath into the hook zone and taking away, forcing Bradford to have to go down to a secondary route. So JHC, I thought, was also a standout at the linebacker position. So really encouraged by what I saw. Again, the only thing that I am still nitpicking about is the pass rush. And this week, if we don't get pressure on Andrew Luck, we will get exposed. You can't let 12 sit back there and think that he won't pick us apart. T.Y. Hilton. And we got one of our old mates coming to town. You know? And he had himself a hell of a game last week. Did Ryan Grant. And so Ryan Grant coming back to town, and you know he wants revenge. So it's going to be a very intriguing game. The Colts don't have anything that scares me but Andrew Luck. He's the one guy that can win them the game. And if we can neutralize Andrew Luck, neutralize their rushing attack, and force Andrew Luck to have to beat us, make them one-dimensional, I feel very confident. Just like Cincinnati did last week, pretty much eliminate the big plays. If they're going to nickel and dime us down the field, if Andrew Luck is going to try to pick us apart in the short passing game and go from chain to chain, stick to stick, let them do that in the hopes that you get a sack or you get a penalty or you get a batted ball or you get something that knocks them off of they're down in distance and gets them off of the sticks and in front of the chains and puts them in a 3rd and long situation. Maybe we can heat them up because their offensive line still not very good. Okay, they're not terrible like they used to be, but they've still got some leaks in their offensive line. Now, they had some guys out last week. Maybe we'll get the benefit of their guys. Most notably, their left tackle, Anthony Costanzo, did not play last week. And that was a problem because Cincinnati was able to get pressure on Andrew Luck off that left side. So if we can get that kind of matchup where we can isolate a backup offensive lineman or just put pressure on their line that's very young and good in certain spots, but still young nonetheless, you can confuse them with some TE games and some different things up front where you're able to maybe mess up the protection and get guys confused. And again, when you have a young line that hasn't played together for a very long time, communication can be a little off. If we can do that, make Andrew Luck uncomfortable, we may be able to rattle his cage. He did throw 2 interceptions last week. So if we can rattle Andrew Luck's cage, we may be able to get ourselves a couple of gifts and have some opportunities to make some plays similar to what Cincinnati was able to do en route to a 34-23 victory over the Colts. But don't get it twisted. They were driving down the field, down 4, 27-23 with the game on the line, and Andrew Luck had those boys going in for the go-ahead score before their tight end, Jack Doyle, was hit, stripped of the football at the 13-yard line of Cincinnati. And the football was then scooped up and run back 87 yards the opposite way for the game-clinching touchdown. So Luck had those boys in a position to potentially steal that game from Cincinnati late before the defense of Cincinnati stepped up and made a play. So we can't take Andrew Luck for granted. We can't go in there assuming, and speaking of which, let's go from the bow of Arizona because we're done with that. We took care of business 24-6, dominated that game 6 ways to Sunday in every facet of the game, offense, defense, special teams. Let's go on to the go of Indianapolis and talk about the Indianapolis Colts because I think this is a game that will tell a lot about this football team. Was last week a fluke? Was last week just luck or not? We're going to find out because the Colts, they're hungry. They don't want to go to 0-2 on the season. They know what's at stake here. They dropped to 0-2 in a very competitive division with Jacksonville, who's gaining confidence by the weeks and who's already 1-0. They lose, and Jacksonville's going back home to take on New England. If they win that game, you know how much confidence Jacksonville will have after dispatching of the AFC champs? So they know they can't afford to fall down 0-2 in this young season. So they're going to come out and give us their best punch. And we've got to protect the house. This is one of those games that I think is there for the taking. And this game, for me, much more about the defense than it is the offense. I don't have any doubts in my mind that our offense can take it to the Colts defensively. I really feel confident that we can win the matchups on that side of the football. They've got a corner out there in Quincy Wilson who's got a club on one of his hands. He's got a broken hand. He can't jam, and he was getting beat. John Ross beat him for a touchdown on a 3-yard fade. A.J. Green beat him for a touchdown because he can't jam. There's not much he can do. He's got a club on one of his hands because it's broken. We can take advantage of that. They've got guys that are young, that are still learning, and we can take advantage of them on the defensive side of the football. I feel like we've got the distinct advantage on that side of the football. Where I worry is on defense. Can we generate enough pressure? I think we can stop the run, but Arizona didn't pose a big enough threat for me to know that, okay, our run defense is legit. I feel good about our run defense, but I want to see more of it. And they didn't have the most success last week versus Cincinnati, but they weren't the worst rushing the football last week against Cincinnati either. They didn't have their starting running back Marlon Mack last week. Don't know if he'll be back for this game. If he is, that poses a much different threat than that of the rookie running back out of Ole Miss, Jordan Wilkins, because Marlon Mack is a 4-4 guy. Jordan Wilkins is more of a 4-5 guy, but he's very quick and decisive in his cuts, gets north and south very quickly, whereas Marlon Mack wants to bounce everything outside. But that being said, he can get the edge and he can turn it up on you really quick. So if Marlon Mack doesn't play, that takes away a little bit of element of the speed game, but they still have Nyheim Hines, the rookie out of NC State, who, remember, their head coach in Indianapolis is Frank Wright. So remember, he's coming over from Philadelphia. So a lot of the same principles you're going to see in this game, and he knows us intimately. Frank Wright was in Philadelphia the last 3 or 4 years. He was coaching against the Redskins twice a year. He knows what we're capable of. This is a different outfit, though. He doesn't know us with Alex Smith at quarterback. He knows us with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. So he's going to watch the tape from last week against Arizona and all the things that we did, and hopefully Jay Gruden has a brand new setup ready to go and to unveil on Frank Wright, because he's going to think he knows this Redskins football team, and he's going to be able to out-execute us on Sunday. And so I look at the Colts offensively, and with their head coach, who's a very smart offensive guy, and Frank Wright, and you look at Andrew Luck, and you look at T.Y. Hilton, and you look at some of the other pieces that they have, Jack Doyle, and Eric Ebron had a strong game. Easy E is on that Colts football team now, for those of you who didn't know. The ex-Detroit Lions tight end. He poses a mismatch threat for us. We struggle versus athletically gifted tight ends. That's why Zach Ertz always eats us up. That's why we have a problem with Evan Ingram. That's why for years Jason Witten used to tear us a new asshole. We struggle with the tight ends in this league. So a guy like Eric Ebron is going to be a big-time point of emphasis for me this week in week 2, because if we let him get off, Andrew Luck already has built a rapport with Eric Ebron. They're making beautiful music already in this young NFL season. And so I look at Ebron as a big-time target along with T.Y. Hilton in the passing game. Those are the two guys that we really need to concern ourselves with. If we can shut down the run game and force the Colts to be one-dimensional, then you get to pin your ears back, go after Luck, make him uncomfortable. Remember, Luck is also athletic enough to get outside of the pocket and use his legs to extend plays and pick up yards, similar to Alex Smith. So we cannot lose sight of our rush lanes and allow him to get up the field, because he'll hurt us, just like Carson Wentz did last season. Andrew Luck, fully capable of doing the exact same thing. So there are a lot of different nuances to that Colts offense, but they're still not really driving the football down the field quite yet. Not like in the past where T.Y. Hilton can hit you for a 67-yard touchdown on any given play. They haven't done that yet. It's coming eventually. I don't want it to be in week 2 versus us. So Luck was able to hit Ebron on like a 35-yard touchdown strike. So he's starting to push it down the field a little bit more. He's getting more and more comfortable as the weeks progress of pushing the football down the field. Will this be the week he tries to hit T.Y. Hilton on a 55-yard touchdown bomb? Let it not be this week. Let us be in the right position. Let us stay on top, keep everything in front of us like we did last week versus Arizona. We made the Cardinals work for everything that they got. Even when they scored their lone touchdown, they had to convert on a 4th down, and they had to get all the way down there on like a 14-play drive, and they had to eat up 6, 7, 8 minutes of the clock. We made them work for everything that they got. The only thing that we almost did was we almost gave up a punt return for a touchdown. And Troy Apke made a great play there to salvage that, and he also got hurt on that play. So hopefully Apke's okay, because he's probably one of the best special teams players we have on the roster. That's part of the reason why the Redskins spent such an early draft pick on him in the 4th round, because they knew about it, not only his speed and his measurables, but his ability to play on special teams was part of the reason why the Redskins made him a pick so early in the 2018 NFL draft. So hopefully Troy Apke isn't going to miss Sunday's game. that being said, feel really good about this football game in particular. I felt good about this in the offseason when I talked about the schedule and teams that I thought we could and should beat. This was a team that I looked at and said, I feel like we're going to get them at the right time. I would have loved to have had Andrew Luck in week 1, personally. But what's better than Andrew Luck in week 1? The Arizona Cardinals in week 1. So we got the 1-0. We got off the schneid. And I'm looking at the Indianapolis Colts, and they look like food, man, and I'm ready to eat. And I'm hoping the fellas are just as hungry as I am for the dub. And so let's get to the final outcome of this Week 2 matchup, the season home opener for the Redskins in 2018 versus the Indianapolis Colts. It's the final outcome. Whoa, yeah! So I look at this Week 2 matchup as one that is extremely winnable for the Redskins. The only threat that I feel like the Indianapolis Colts pose to us is on the offensive side of the football with Andrew Luck. And, oh, by the way, Adam Vinatieri is still kicking the shit out of the football. He did miss a field goal last week, but he's still kicking them from 55. I watched him kick a field goal from 55 yards in the preseason. And he kicked, I think, 3 field goals last week versus Cincinnati. And a couple of them were from distance, like 49. One was like 51. He's still banging them home. So just about anywhere on our side of the football field is fair game for a field goal attempt. So we got to play really good defense because they've got a kicker that they trust, that they feel like can kick it from just about anywhere on the field. And he's been Mr. Automatic throughout his career. So we need to play good enough defense to keep them from getting in the scoring range so that they don't feel comfortable enough kicking 51 and 54-yard field goals and making it tougher for us to try to put some distance between us and them in the ball game. Bottom line is, if we can run the football like we did in week 1, if we can control the pace of the game, and most importantly, not turn it over. We took care of the football, and that's what you get with Alex Smith. Adrian Peterson has got to hold on to the football. All right. I read somewhere that this guy had one of the highest fumble rates in the league when he was in Minnesota. So he's a guy that will put the football on the carpet. We saw that. Fighting for extra yards, trying to get everything out of that screen that we dumped off to him, or that was a bootleg where he snuck out into the flats and got up the field for 58 yards and then fumbled at the end. We need him to hold on to the rock. If we don't turn it over, I think we can generate a couple of turnovers from Andrew Luck and that Colts football team. I think we can get a couple of turnovers out of them. And if we can take care of the football, create some short fields for the offense, and do what we did last week, score touchdowns, not field goals. You know how big that was? Last year, that Cardinals game would have been close. It would have been 16-6. Instead of 24-6 and the game being out of reach. We would have been sweating down the stretch because the Cardinals would have still been in the game because we would have settled for 2 field goals instead of 3 touchdowns. We would have had 1 touchdown and 2 field goals, and we would have ended up with 3 field goals total and 1 touchdown, and it would have been 16-6. They would have went for 2 to try to cut it to a 1-score game, and if they would have gotten it, we would have been looking at a situation where 1 score and another 2-point conversion ties the game instead of 2 more scores with 2 more 2-point conversions, and they didn't get the first one, so they were out of luck there. So if we can get in the end zone, which has been a bugaboo for us the last couple of years, if we can get in the end zone, we're going to put the pressure on the Indianapolis Colts, similar to what Cincinnati did by getting into the end zone. We get in the end zone, we score points, we make it tough on the Andrew Luck-led Indianapolis Colts, who aren't in full bloom yet. Andrew Luck still isn't in that position where he can go out, put the team on his back, and throw for 400 yards and put up 41 points on the road and win. He's not there quite yet. He threw it 50-some-odd times, so he's getting there. This can't be the week that he gets there. Defense has to be flying around, being ferocious. We've got to get pressure on Andrew Luck. We've got to get pressure. Stop the run first and foremost. That's without saying, but got to say it anyway. Stop the run and make Andrew Luck have to beat us. And then when that time comes, apply pressure. Stay in your rush lanes, but apply pressure. That interior pressure that we got last week, outstanding. I want to see more of that. So I'd love to see an encore performance from the interior defensive line. And let's get some more help from the guys off the edge. Really looking forward to this game. This one's going to tell me a lot. Because if we are as dominant as we were last week, and I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking for the dub. I don't care how we get it. I just want it. But if we are anywhere near as dominant as we were last week in this win, we're looking at a totally different football team this year, 2018. And I already think we're looking at a totally different team because when's the last time we had a wide receiver position with no egos? Because the game that we had last week, despite winning, if Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, or Terrell Pryor were on the team after a game like that, they would have been bitching. The egos are being checked at the door with this roster. This team feels different. But if you want to sell me on different, prove it at home, week 2 versus the Indianapolis Colts. I've got the Redskins getting the win. I said it when I broke down the Redskins schedule that I wasn't afraid of the Indianapolis Colts. I wasn't afraid of the Green Bay Packers. I'm not afraid of Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints. I told you that I thought those were winnable games. And so I look at the Indianapolis Colts as a winnable football game. And we're going to find out just how good we are as a football team. Was last week a fluke? Was that a figment of our imagination? Was that a mirage? Or was that really real? We're going to find out. We're going to take steps to finding out how real was week 1's dominant performance over the Arizona Cardinals. Because the Indianapolis Colts are going to be desperate, they're going to be hungry, and they're a much better football team than the one we saw last week in Arizona. So this one's going to be tough, but hopefully we'll be gritty and get the dub nonetheless. I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold until we meet again. Hail to our beloved Washington Redskins. I feel really good about this one, man. But again, they've got to prove that they can handle success. A lot of people, remember, we were an afterthought going into the season. No one gave us a shot in this division. No one gave us a shot as a playoff team in the NFC. And I know it's early, it's week 1, but the players can't let last week get to their head. Everyone's starting to elevate them. You look at these power rankings, Redskins are shooting up. Everyone's saying, who's the one team that you disrespected and you're looking at them now and you're saying, maybe I made a mistake. Guess whose name is rolling off of everybody's tongue? Redskins. Nah, we don't want that. We don't want your pats on the back now. Stay hungry. Stay hungry. Go get the dub at the crib versus the Indianapolis Colts. It's there for the taking. Go get it. Protect the house. We've got to turn FedEx Field into a tough place to play. Right now, our fans don't believe. So other fans infiltrate our building. Other fans weren't infiltrating the building in 2012. Why? Because the fans believed. You start winning football games, they will come. It starts on Sunday, 1 o'clock against the Indianapolis Colts. Fellas, bring home the dub. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.